We are hoping that this is really truly live. Are we really truly live? Let me see if this is connected. It's still saying waiting. What is going on? Let me check. Is anything showing up? Ah! Haha, I think I'm actually live now. I think I'm actually live. Yes! Victory. Is anything showing up? We are now going to take this link and get it to the right place. Actually live because we've been having problems, and it's so much fun. Okay. Let me do this. Let me do this. Can I? In stream, please go to this link. All right. Sorry, guys. I'll be focused on the stream in just a moment. I need to make sure that everybody knows that this is not behaving. I had some serious problems with this sucker. I thought I was logged in. Everything seemed fine, but then all of a sudden, my program just flipped out on me. What should have been fine, what I was getting ready to do, I clicked out of something and I lost it all. And then I thought I got all the stuff together. No, it said that it hated me. Go here. Post. And we're going to swap. Wow, that's freaking out. Stop that. In the meantime, I at least can give you guys some music or something to listen to, because I know that's going to be boring just watching me trying to get this all together. I'm sorry for the complications. Let me get these things going to the right place. And to the right people. Do. There we go. And then let us swap out. I can get this stuff to behave for me. Getting it all together. I mean, maybe I'll give everyone a chance to find the proper video. Let's take this off and do this. Save. Okay. Hey, we actually got someone else here. Huzzah, hooray for that. I want to make sure that I am seeing the right chat, because that will help so that I can actually respond to people. And welcome here, Jen. Hi. Oh, my word. That was an event. That was special. That was not something I want to do again if I can get this stuff to stop being done. A good quick thanks to my friend and video editor Tyler, who was able to show me what I needed to know so that I could get to the right place. That is very much appreciated. Let me pull up the right things. Okay. Anyway, howdy doody gals and pals. My name is Tiffany. We have gotten off on a really bumpy start here for an extra special video. If you don't know, I actually have my own authors page on Facebook, which is all geared to more writing stuff. I was having issues of getting people to being able to see my streams there on Facebook, so I swapped over here to YouTube, which clearly I'm still having some problems, but hopefully we're going to get this all figured out. Anyway, what this is, if you don't know already, this is Waves of Verity Jones. It is a pirate mermaid choose-your-own-adventure fantasy story in which I write a chapter, then read it out to you guys, and we actually see the story form based upon choices that you as the audience make. At the end of each chapter, you will be given choices. Those choices will affect the path that our main character, Jax, will go, what choices he makes, what ways he goes. And sometimes not all of the options are good options for him. Sometimes it doesn't go the way that we would think it would go. Chapter 1, quick overview to get you guys caught up if you haven't seen the videos. If you do want to, you can go back and actually hear the chapters 1 and 2 on this channel. It has its own video there. But chapter 1, we meet Jax, and he has stolen a map that has a map of the entire world of Fahe. Fahe is this largely made up of just water, very few land world, where the mer people are the ruling classes, and it has become pretty much illegal for humans to just travel the oceans at will, except for under very specific circumstances. This leads to Jax and his crewmates, who are all on the board of the pirate ship Sannleika, to be pirates. You know, those are things. His captain is Verity Jones. So we have Jax. He stole that map, and he's going to try to give it to his captain because it's a big prize. It's a big deal. It's going to change everything for them. Well, he gets waylaid in chapter 2 because he comes across this trinket that is called a moonstone. And that moonstone seems to have mystical powers. He's not really sure what to do with it. Here, let me actually bring up some images to connect everyone else with. So we have... if I can find So here we see, if I can get this to open. Oh, all those images then went away. Come back to me. Come back to me. We have Jax down here in the corner with the kitty cat, and that's Captain Verity up in the top. Now, Jax came across this item here, a moonstone, which seems to have some kind of mystical qualities he doesn't know anything about. This man, known as Kellyeth, which is one of the names you guys voted in, is the benefactor who's funding their latest voyage. He is bandaged everywhere except for where you can see his eyes. He seems to know things about the moonstone that Jax doesn't really know what's going on. Jax ended up with this item, and he didn't try to take it. It just appeared. You'll have to go through the story to see how. So things seem really, really off about that. Jax doesn't feel safe with Kellyeth. Jax is concerned what is his greater impetus for everything. Now, the choices for chapter 2 that led us into chapter 3 is that Jax had an option of who he would spend his time with. Now, stealing the map was a good thing, but it got him in trouble too, because he was dumb about it, and he almost got caught, and he almost caused problems for the whole crew, which then put Jax on kitchen duty to be his punishment to take care of his stuff. This here is Eason, the cook of the ship. Now, Jax was working on the kitchen. He messed up, but he got distracted and was told, oh, you don't have to worry about it right now. He told himself, I'll come in and I'll finish it and be a true man and take care of my stuff. Well, on the way, he gets taken out by this man, Davies, who is the local gambler and shyster who messes with him a bit, but tells him, well, hey, if you come and gamble with me, I might give you some insider information on Kelliot. So there's the second option. And the third option is Simmons, one of Jax's friends, who's also a cartographer who goes on the ship with them. And he wants to meet with Jax and the captain to try to decide how they're going to handle the map and let Jax actually have a voice in the voyage. The choice was, would Jax spend time finishing out his chores for Eason? Would he go gamble with Davies to see who Kelliot is? Or would he take care of the map with Simmons and the captain? And that is where we are right now in the story. So we're going to find out what happens, because the vote ended up being that Jax would take the bet with Davies to see who Kelliot is and can he be trusted. So, without any further ado, I do appreciate your patience in all this intro. We're going to go ahead and jump straight into the story. Remember, you're more than welcome to put comments in the chat while this is going about, while I'm reading it. I won't really stop to read the comments as it's going along, but we'll have a time for a little back and forth at the end of it. Okay, so here we go. 4 white paws danced between a flurry of hands, wooden goblets, and bowls. The crowd was a mix of roaring laughter and curses. A few of the crew remained unmoved by the chaos, hovering over their stew and slurping it down before someone else could cause it to spill. "Get that accursed cat out of here!" Ship gunner Umar shouted from the far end of the long table. "Well, we ain't trying to woo it!" Deckhand Cooper shot back, hands grasping just short of the orange and white blur. Sedona took her spoon and smacked Cooper on the back of his head. "Don't hurt him. You want to make it to morning." "It ain't my fault Short's cat got let loose in the mess." Eason bumped in behind them, slopping out a ladleful of stew from the remainder of his pot. Sedona's face twisted in a groan. "Pa, you didn't." "What?" Eason shrugged. "The poor thing sounded so pitiful scratching at his door." Sedona sunk her face into her hands. Jax stifled a snort as he sat back against the wall, finishing off his serving. It was a far better view from back here anyway. Jax's eyes followed Shurik's pet. The cat's tail twitched in playful anticipation as he bounded over the shoulders of one of his mates. Jax pressed his lips together hard, a laugh tickling his throat. "If you'd all quit squawking, he'd stop taking so much delight in messing with you." Simmons rolled his eyes from across the way. A short, sharp whistle pierced through the hubbub, freezing everyone in place. The quartermaster himself stood in the open doorway, glowering at the scene. He eyed his little friend, who was now perched on his first mate's head, a small chunk of beef in its teeth. Shurik snapped his fingers twice. The cat sprang through the air, practically floating down to the table. In a few quick leaps, he placed himself aloft Shurik's right shoulder. Raising an eyebrow at the room, Shurik caught sight of Eason and shot him a warning look. Eason avoided his gaze, spinning his eyes back to his stew and humming to himself. The quartermaster turned to leave, shutting the door behind him in silence. Almost on cue, the room exploded in conversation again. Jax smiled to himself and shook his head. "And I'm telling you, we're headed straight for a trap!" Umar's voice carried yet again about the crowd. Jax sighed and took in another spoonful. Umar was the most paranoid man he'd met. He always thought each journey would be their last, but when given the chance, he'd never leave. At this point, Jax was certain the man just liked drama. "Shut up, Umar! He'll hear you!" Ship Carpenter Pendleton hissed to his not entirely sober compatriot. "Bah! He's too good for us common thieves!" Umar waved him off. "He wouldn't dare to sup with us." His voice pitched up in mock flourish. "Nah, I think he just can't handle the smell of Davies." Sedona laughed, tossing a hunk of bread into her mouth. "I know!" Davies cried out from the other side of the table. "I washed just last week!" You live on the ocean, old man, Cooper laughed. You gotta get over your fear of water eventually. Davy stood from his chair and hobbled away from the group. Pausing briefly in front of Jax, he gave him a knowing wink, and then left the mess room behind. I'm just saying, Umar started up again. Bandage boy ain't human. He towers over Easton for Pescathon's sake. And why would a gilly trade in their fins to join in with us lesser land dwellers then? Funding our excursion, no less? Cooper shot back. To bring in the fake traders like us. To learn how we bypass their systems. See how far our guilds reach. Anything to keep our kind from polluting their precious seas. Only way a gilly boards this ship is if the captain allows them to. Are you saying captain's conspiring against us, Umi? Cooper taunted, rolling his eyes. Umar slammed down his mug and made a staggered leap toward Cooper. Pendleton stood in time to catch a hold of Umar, half restraining him and half keeping the gunner standing. I'd spit on me own mother's grave before I ever insulted the captain like that, and you know it, Coop! Calm down, Umar. Pendleton patted the man's shoulder. We all know you meant nothing of the sort. Umar stilled, allowing the carpenter to guide him back to his seat. Something's not right, Saul, I tell you. Something's not right with that giant out there. Way to go, Coop. Now Umar's gonna be pouting all night. Sedona sighed. Me? What did I? Should have just let him be. Simmons echoed from the corner. Well, someone has to set him straight. Clearly it shouldn't have been you. And the next round of arguments and teasing started. Normally, Jax would have just chuckled at the chaos, maybe get in a few good jabs himself, but for once, what Umar said resonated with him. Could Kellyeth be a gilly? Or rather, a gilly walker, as humans called merkind who traded their fins for a set of time and purpose on land before their magic wore off and forced them back into the sea. If Kellyeth was a gilly walker, then the captain would know for sure, but gillies had all sorts of mystical tricks under their scales. He'd heard rumors of their special persuasion powers. What if Captain was under his spell? Or what if he used his skills to cover his true plans? Captain was great at getting information, but no man could stand against gilly powers. Jax's stomach churned, making his tongue lose any desire for the remainder of his bowl. Standing up, he placed the bowl on the table. Glancing over at Simmons, he saw the man was deep in conversation with Sedona. Surely he'd understand why he couldn't worry about the map right now. Turning to leave, he had to quickly sidestep Eason, as the cook had started cleaning up leftover dishes. Jax felt a slight twinge in his chest, but resolved within himself to put in double the work in the morning to make up for tonight. Leaving the mess hall behind, Jax wove his way through the inner workings of the ship until he finally reached the munition section of the cargo hold. In the far back corner, a singular candle cast its glow across the wooden beams. A shadow danced to and fro as a distinctive clink of Davy's dice clattered to the floor. Feet creaking across the paneled floor, Jax took a deep breath before approaching the old gambler. I was beginning to think you weren't gonna show us, Smitty. Jax rounded some crates to finally come face to face with Davies. The old man sat cross-legged, hunched over the dice in front of him. The mischievous twinkle of his eyes by candlelight almost made him seem childlike. Squatting down, Jax mimicked the man's posture. A slight golden glint caught Jax's attention. To Davy's left sat a small pile of gold coins. Been having a good bit of night. Davy tilted his head at the pile. Sure you want to test your luck, boy? Jax pressed his lips together. Davies, if this stranger really is a danger to us, why wouldn't you just tell the captain? Wouldn't that be in both our best interests? Davies picked up his dice and set them in front of Jax. Captain knew who I was when she brought me on. But, Smitty, we're pirates. Noble ain't really in the definition, but seeking fortune is. So you gonna roll or not? Jax grit his teeth slightly, anger burning in his chest. After all their time together, the gravedigger still only cared for himself. You never told me what you'd get out of this if I lost. Oh, that! Davy sat up with a big gummy smile. When you lose, you'll owe me a favor to be repaid at my liking. Whatever I ask at that time, you got to do. Jax narrowed his eyes. If I lose, how can you be certain I'll hold at my end? After all, like you said, pirates and nobility don't go hand in hand. Aye, Davies winked at him. But you and I both know you're far more than just a pirate. Jax could feel the blood draining from his face. Clearing his throat, he kept his features somber. Fine, but I get to pick the game. Davies leaned back with a wounded expression. Now that ain't fair. This was my idea and all. Exactly why you shouldn't get to all the control here, old man. You avoid a fair game like it was one of Shirk's soaps. Bah, fine. Have it your way. My gals here never let me down anyway. Jax furrowed his brow. Odds and evens. First to 21 wins. But I get to be evens. Davies crossed his arms over his chest and jutted up his chin. Hey now, evens is my thing. Exactly. Jax couldn't suppress the smirk that curled across his mouth. Davies narrowed his eyes at him and thought for a moment. Finally, he let out a sigh and shook his head. Fine, have it your way, Smitty. The girls are all yours. Jax reached out his hand and picked up the little wooden cubes. They were heavier than one would have expected. Rattling them around in his fists for a second, he finally let them fly, sending them clattering against the wooden boards below. Both Jax and Davies leaned over as one. A smile crept across Jax's face. One die showed 4 black dots. The other showed 2. 1 point for me, old man. Davies said nothing as he picked up the cubes and gave them a toss. 2 and a 5. No points. Jax sat up smugly. Davies grumbled under his breath while Jax rolled once more. 4 and a 6. Another in my favor. The dice clinked to the ground with an added flourish of Davies' wrists. Ha! 1 and 1. That'd be double for me, boy. Don't count me out just yet. Back and forth they went for a time, points slowly building and aggravatingly close to each other's. At last, the score sat at 20 points in Jax's favor. Picking up the dice, he rolled them around in his fingers for a moment. Remember now, Smitty, 21's the goal. You go over, and I win. Jax shot out a breath through his nose and rolled his eyes. Inwardly, his heart hammered against his chest. A slight beading of sweat formulated on his brow and along the base of his hairline. Taking a breath, he flicked his wrists in the air, loosening the dice to the ground. The cubes clinked and bounced across the boards for an eternity before finally settling down flat. Jax's eyes scanned the black little dots, heart wedged into his throat. A chuckle rumbled, then grew into a full, goading laugh from Davies. 2 6s! That makes 22 and the wager mine! Davies clapped his hands together and happily scooped his ladies back up. Tough luck there, Smitty. We could always go double or nothing if you'd like to give it another try. Jax's stomach dropped to his toes as he realized the gravity of what just happened. His cheeks burned and his fingers dug into the palms of his hands. He knew not to fall into Davies' hands, and yet... Swallowing hard, Jax shook his head and pushed himself up from the floor. Your call then, boy. Must say, I've been looking forward to I'll be looking forward into calling in your marker. Jax kept his mouth shut as he left. Davies' giddy laugh digging at him from behind. Too worked up to head to his bunk, Jax opted for a trip topside. The blast of the night breeze across his skin helped to soothe some of his aggravation. The blue-black of the sky sparkled with thousands of stars above, not a single cloud to obscure their splendor. Jax leaned against the railing of the ship, attempting to allow the sound of the waves to calm him further. He mentally kicked himself once more. He knew better than to take on Davies. Simmons had told him multiple times. Why did he never learn? And my list of stupid keeps growing. Jax sighed to himself. Eyes wandering, Jax glanced around to see who had all night duty. Being the calm evening it was, most of the crew would be fine resting down below. Lanterns swayed here and there to help light up the deck. Scanning up to the helm, Jax could make out Shurik's strict stance on the wheel. He must have been standing in to give Sedona a break. An extra tall figure loomed a few steps behind the quartermaster. Peering through the night, Jax could only assume the frame belonged to Kalia. But why he was staying by Shurik, he couldn't imagine. If it had been some of his other mates, he might have been leery, but Shurik was as loyal to the captain and the Sannleika as Davies was self-serving. Maybe that's why Kalia was there, so Shurik could keep an eye on him. You've got to be kidding me! This is where I find you? Jax winced at the infuriated tone dripping through Sedona's words. We've been waiting for you for hours! I finally decided to try and fetch you thinking maybe you were finishing up kitchen duty with my pa, which you honestly should have been. Imagine my surprise when pa tells me you skipped out straight after dinner. Sedona, Waving a hand in the air, she cut him off. Now my pa may not get mad at the likes of that, but he's always been too soft on you if you ask me. I, on the other hand, don't take kindly to my time being wasted, and that's exactly what you did, Jax Smitt. I look all over the ship in places you should have been, but instead, I find you here. Sedona emphatically gestured both hands at Jax, a flush across her face and nostrils flaring. Lazing about top deck, staring into nothing. She pointed a finger in his face. It's one thing to stand me up, cabin boy, but it's a whole nother thing to leave Simmons and Captain hanging. You really had a chance here for something amazing to happen for you. The captain could have just as easily taken what you found and set us on whatever course you wanted, but Simmons thought you deserved a chance at giving your 2 pence on our next voyage. Way to show your gratitude. You should have at the very least told Simmons you were coming. I guess stargazing is just too important to show someone I thought was your friend any respect. Jax's ears burned as he clenched his fist. Give it a rest, Sedona. Missing a meeting isn't the end of the world. And I wasn't just wasting time up here, I was with Davies. Davies? Sedona's face scrunched as her head tipped to the side. Why would you spend hours with Davies? Her eyes widened as her jaw dropped slightly. You got into another dice game with him, didn't you? Her voice exploded. And that's supposed to make all this better? Everything all right here? The calm but firm tone of Captain Verity cut through the tension. Sedona straightened and spun to face her. Sorry, Captain. I just got a little worked up. Verity raised an eyebrow at her and then looked to Jax. I see you located my cabin boy. A queasiness gripped Jax's stomach as it suddenly became impossible to look his captain in the eyes. Sedona, go get some rest before your next shift on the helm starts. Yes, Captain. Sedona dipped her head and whisked off to her quarters. Verity turned to Jax stiffly. With me, cabin boy. Jax swallowed hard and complied, walking somberly back to the captain's quarters. Entering the little study area, the captain shut the door behind them. Jax stood in the center, waiting for the lashing to commence. Verity walked over to her desk and leaned against the top of it with a heavy sigh. Jax recognized that sigh and flinched. Disappointment was always worse than anger. I try really hard not to give special treatment to anyone on my ship, Jax. Verity crossed her arms over her chest, her eyes locked on some unseen object in the distance, as if searching for the best words to use. Thing is, kid, I can't help but have very high expectations of you. Jax's shoulders drooped slightly as he kept his hands in his pockets. Your mother didn't send you to me because she was trying to be rid of you. Hearing mention of his mother instantly clamped a tightness around his heart. We had you come aboard because we both believed in you, kid. Heck, I still do. If you'd stayed on land, they'd have ruined you for sure. But you've grown into quite a young man over these past 3 years. Jax picked up an eye slightly. This didn't sound like a dressing down. Are you happy here on my ship, kid? Jax's heart skipped a beat as the color drained from his face. Head shooting up, he took a step forward as his voice cracked. Of course I am. I love the Sannleika. I love this crew. There's no other place I would rather be. Then explain yourself, Jax. Why do you run off without warning? Why did you skip out on your responsibility to Eason? Why are you undertaking dangerous adventures alone? Jax took a deep breath and slowly let it out. I was gonna come back and finish up my chores for Eason, I promise, and I should have spoken to Simmons before vanishing. You're right. And I'm sorry. Verity raised an eyebrow. And? Jax's brows stitched together in confusion. Where were you then, lad? What kept you from these things? Shame rested heavy on Jax's shoulders. I was trying to get information out of Davies about the bandaged man. He mumbled and kept his eyes to the floor. Verity let out a snort. You were trying to get information out of the gravedigger. And how did that work out for you? Jax grimaced. I owe him a favor now and learned nothing. The captain shook her head and sighed. That's gonna bite you later. Didn't Simmons warn you about that man? Jax sunk a little lower. Yes. And do you trust that I know how to run my ship? Of course, Captain. But you don't trust my judgment or ability to make certain the crew is cared for. No, that's not it. Then why does it matter so much what Davies knows? Because he's the gravedigger. He finds out things that even you may not know about. And do I know when every squall will start or how many we'll face? No. And yet we never run short on our supplies. Yes, but I don't... Preparation, kid. I'll never know everything I'd like to before stepping into something, but I will do everything necessary to make sure we can handle what comes next. But part of the way that works is you have to trust my decisions. This Kellyeth, is he fully trustworthy? Of course not. No one is in our business, Jax. By the very nature of who we are and what we do, you have to be at least a little crooked. Jax's face twisted in thought. But if we're all crooked, how can you trust anybody? How do we know, as a crew, we're even safe under you? Not that I'm saying you don't have our backs, that is, Captain. A smile graced Verity's lips, her eyes softening. In this kind of life, you gotta focus less on pasts or even personal agendas. For our crew, I look at the intentions behind each action. So, heart? Heart. Verity nodded back to him. But don't go telling the others. Part of why it works so well is because no one else knows. Then why tell me? Captain Verity made a face at him. I know my nephew isn't this dumb. Jax gave a nervous laugh and a sheepish smile. Apparently I am. For Paskathan's sake. Verity rubbed a hand over her face. Kid, did you or did you not tell me you'd like to run your own ship someday? Jax's eyes widened. Oh, yes, oh. Now you get it. Verity chuckled to herself for a second before returning to her serious demeanor. Jax, if you desire to lead someday, and to lead well, then you're gonna have to take care of your inner circle. Yes, Captain. And you can't wait until then to start. You have to start forming these habits now. Tell me, who is your inner circle here on the Sannleika? Jax stopped for a minute, letting each crewman's face go past his mind's eye. I guess Simmons, Eason, Sedona, and you and Shirk, of course. Jax sighed. And I messed up with almost all of you through one stupid choice. Verity crossed the room and placed a hand on his shoulder, causing Jax to look up into her eyes. A deep sorrow swirled inside them, catching him off guard. Had he hurt her that badly? No, that was an old pain, a history yet uncovered. Take care of your people, kid, and let them also care for you. One man by himself cannot tame the sea. If you go it alone, these waters will take you under. Jax nodded solemnly, unable to loosen the lump in his throat to speak. There were so many things he wanted to ask his aunt about her past, but it was always that haunted look right there that silenced him. He doubted she even knew she wore it. He just couldn't find the courage yet to step into that place of darkness for her. Jax cleared his throat and shifted his position. He forced himself to connect with her eyes. I understand, Captain. I promise. Good. Verity smiled and ruffled a hand through his hair. Now head back to your quarters. I expect you up extra early to pick back up on your punishment. That way you can revisit the whole map thing after noon meal. Yes, Captain. Jax bobbed his head and turned to leave. Oh, and Jax, Verity called out to him right before he reached the door. No more letting Easton cover for you, okay? Jax bit his lip and winced slightly. Yes, Captain. Sorry again, Captain. Good night, kid. Jax smiled softly and left the captain's quarters, making his way back to the steps down to his bunk. Jax peeked over his shoulder back at the helm. Shirk stood resolute as ever, but his bandaged shadows seemed to have disappeared. He had half a mind to go see what this Kelliath had gotten up to. A twist of his gut made him shake his head and push on down the stairs. He had done enough messing up for one very long day. Best thing for him to do now was follow exactly what he'd been told. Reaching below deck, the darkness of the room was only barely broken up by a single lantern in the center. Noting that its light was burning low, Jax picked up his pace. Reaching his bunk, he lifted the thin mattress and withdrew a roughly bound journal and charred stick shaped into the form of a pen. Stepping gingerly across the room, Jax positioned himself under the lantern. Unlatching one of the glass panes, he reached up and let his stick smolder over the flame for a moment. Blowing out the glowing embers, he used the fresh charring to add to his writing. Turning to the most recent page, he set to recording the events of the day. The steady snoring and sporadic sleep-talking around him let Jax know he didn't have to worry about anyone noticing him. The number of times he had to stop mid-sentence to rekindle his writing tool made the entry take even longer to complete. He told himself he could always wait till morning to borrow some ink and a quill from Simmons again, but he worried the night's sleep would cause the day's events to haze. If he was going to be an accurate historian, he needed to record each event while his memories were fresh and clear. Finally, Jax scrawled out the last line of the entry. These waters will take you under. Jax held the stick between his teeth as he let the words wash over him. He leaned against the post that held the lantern, staring at the writing. Closing the journal, he let out a low sigh and rested his head against the beam. Don't do it alone, she said. But when there was so much secrecy, how could he truly ever let anyone in? It wasn't safe for him or Captain. He shuddered to think of the outcome for his mother. Jax fingered the worn edges of his journal for a moment, memories of his family invading his mind. He squeezed his eyes shut and vigorously shook his head, chasing each thought away. Pushing off from the beam, he tiptoed his way back to his bunk, securely tucking away his journal before crawling in. It didn't take him long to slip into sleep after laying his head down. The light of the morning sun soon crept its way through the open door above the stairs. The chime for the morning shift rang off in the distance. Above Jax, deckhand Cooper rolled about and let out a groan. Kicking his feet over the side of his bunk, he skipped the side rigging and stepped on Jax's bed, accidentally crunching the toes of Jax's right foot in the process. Jolting awake with a yelp, Jax kicked at his bunkmate, who just barely hopped out of the way in time. Come on, Coop, seriously! Jax cried out bleary-eyed. Sorry, kid. Cooper replied half-heartedly as he stumbled to get the rest of his clothes back on. Jax growled and rubbed the sleep from his face, not quite ready to get up and a bit sour by the throbbing of his toes. Jax flopped over on his side, facing the wall. Sleep almost took over him once more, but his hand had somehow hooked into a notch on the wall. Mind somewhere between sleep and awake, Jax let his fingers pry at the odd opening for a second. Lightning struck his brain and shot his eyes wide open. Frantically feeling along the side of his bunk, it was undeniable. His hidden cubby had been left open, and the map from the inside was gone. Alright, and that ends Chapter 3 of The Ways of Captain Verity Jones. I'm going to bring this over here so that you guys can see more readily what our choices are. Okay. Choice number 1 that we're starting off with, we get to name Shirk's cat. So here are your options. You can either be Mr. Whiskers, if I can talk, Reginald, or Dr. Goodwin. So what I want you to do is you can vote in the chat here. If you follow on my Facebook page, you can also vote in the event or any of those. I'll have a spot that I'll put on the Facebook page for you to vote there too. But just make sure you vote somewhere, whether you want the cat's name to be Mr. Whiskers, Reginald, or Dr. Goodwin. Choice number 2, the more serious one. What should Jax do about the map? Should he go tell the captain immediately? Should he go find his friend Sedona and get her, if I can do words, get her to help him figure out what happened? Or if he's suspecting Kellyeth here, which he does, should he search Kellyeth's belongings to see if he can find if the stranger took the map? So what does he do? Does he immediately go tell the captain? Does he get help from Sedona? Or does he go straight to try to investigate Kellyeth's belongings to see if that's where the map went? So I want you to put in that chat which options. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so you can see both of the things to vote for. Let me see. I'm going to make this singular. Single space. There we go. There we go. That should make it a little bit easier for you guys to see it. So, the name of the cat, and who does he go to, or what does he do about the map that is now missing? All right. Now, the voting for this is going to stay open, or I'll receive the voting for it until Tuesday of this coming week. So that would be, what date is that? The 29th. So by 6 o'clock on the 29th, I'm going to cut off the voting time period. You have plenty of time to vote here on this video, on the other page, and on Instagram. I'm going to make some posts about it, showing the things you can vote wherever you want to leave your vote. If you really want to see a certain thing happen, get a friend or somebody else to vote that as well, because whoever votes what the most, that is what will take place. All right. So that is pretty much what we have for our stream tonight. I thank you guys so much for coming out. I thank you so much for your patience with trying to get through all of this. I know there's plenty of problems from the start. And hopefully we'll figure out how to do the streaming stuff without more complications. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you've had fun with Jax and Verity and getting to know all these characters. I've been having a blast writing it up and seeing where it's all going. It's a great exercise in having to follow whatever you guys choose. But that's what we have, and I will see you the next Saturday that we'll be streaming this will be April 9th. So I will see you guys then. Thanks again for coming out, and bye!